Hiya! Welcome back to In the Kitchen with Tabby. Happy Valentine's Day. I love this day. There's no better day during the year to show love for the people that you care about. And so what better way for my honey anyway to show him how much I love him than to make him his very favorite cake. This is his Mamaw's oatmeal cake. And it is super easy to put together, not a whole lot of ingredients, and I think you guys are really gonna love it as much as I do. So let's get cooking. All right, so here we go. I'm gonna show you what we're gonna need to make this absolutely amazing cake. I can't wait for you guys to see. It's the oatmeal cake, like I said earlier, so it's my husband's favorite. This is gonna be his Valentine's Day gift today. So what you're gonna need to get started, you need 1 cup of quick oats. You need some avocado oil or any kind of neutral oil. The recipe does not call for vanilla, but I'm a vanilla fan, so I always throw a little vanilla in. You're gonna need some flour, brown sugar, and regular sugar. Now I know I told you before we're kind of cutting back on sugar, so he's gonna get 1 piece of this cake, and then I'm gonna donate some of it to our neighbors. So 1 brown sugar and 1 regular sugar, and then we have some baking soda, some cinnamon, and some salt. That's all you're gonna need for the cake. For the icing, you're gonna need sweetened coconut flakes, some walnuts, heavy whipping cream, stick of butter, and some brown sugar. So let's get going. So right now in this pan, I have some water boiling. So we're gonna take that boiling water, I need 1.5 cups of it. So I'm gonna bring that over here and just pour it into my measuring cup here. It is very hot, so be very careful. Let's see what I've got. Oh, I almost nailed it. Almost nailed it. All right, so 1.5 cups of boiling water. I'm gonna turn my stove off. We're gonna pour that right on top of that oatmeal. 1.5 cups of water to 1 cup of oatmeal. Just gonna give that a little stir. And then we're just gonna set that aside while we put the rest of the cake together. I love the smell of oatmeal. Reminds me of when I was little. All right, so in this bowl, we're going to take the brown sugar, 1 cup, and the regular sugar, like I said, mine's organic sugar, so it's got a little color to it, but you can use just regular white sugar. Got my recipe right up here so I don't miss anything. So you're mixing the sugars together, and then we're gonna add in 1/2 cup of the oil. And you're gonna be kind of like, are you sure you're doing that right? When you see what this batter looks like. I'm putting all of that oil in there, but it's really going to be a pretty dry batter until we throw that oatmeal in. Okay, so the oil is in, and then we're going to do 2 eggs. There's 1 and 2. My sweet neighbor gave me those eggs. Nice ones. All right. Got my trusty fork here. It's one of those great big serving forks. So I'm just going to mix all of this together, break those eggs up, and just mix together the oil, the egg, and those sugars. I was talking with my Amish friend the other day. She was here actually yesterday using the phone because it was her birthday. So she was using the phone to talk to her family who lives in Canada. And I was telling her about my show. She's the very sweet friend of mine that makes my pizza sauce and my ketchup, and she does my canned cherries that I used in the cake yesterday. But we were talking about the cooking, my cooking page and the recipes and things, and she said, you know, that reminds me of a poem. And so I asked her if I could write it down because I wanted to share it with you guys since today's Valentine's Day. I thought it was really sweet. It was called Hail to the Woman, and let's see, I have it here. I don't want to forget. I didn't want to forget to, oh, his phone locked. Here we go. Hail to the woman. It says, hail to the woman who's learned the art of cooking her way to her husband's heart. She bakes him cakes and pies for dinner. He couldn't be happier, but he could be thinner. I thought that was really funny. So I said, Miss Ruth, is it okay if I share that? And she said, well, yes, it's not my poem. I just have it memorized. So I just thought that was sweet. So just remember, you can make your cakes and pies and he'll never be happier, but he could be a little thinner. If you know my husband, he's already very thin. He weighs the same thing he did when he was in high school. It's the craziest thing. It's very unfair. Okay, like I said, vanilla is not in the recipe, but I'm going to throw a little vanilla in. I just think it adds in a little, I don't know, just adds a little something, something. So I'm going to put that in. All right. And then we're going to, and you can already see how thick that is. Just with the oil and the sugars and that little bit of vanilla and egg. So now we're going to do our flour. And we need 1 1/4 cups. So I'm going to push this down 1 1/4. So this side is for liquid ingredients, this side is for dry. So we're going for the dry ingredients. So I'm going to put this in here. 1 1/4 cups of flour. And I think I've told you before, when you're doing this, you don't want to pack that flour in. You just want to kind of let it fall in gently on its own. That's kind of self-sifting. And if you pack it in there, you're actually going to get more sugar or more flour than what you need for the recipe, and then your cake is not going to be, it'll be tough. So there's right at 1 1/4 cups. So we're going to dump that in. 1 1/4. Make sure I get all of it. And now we're going to mix that up. You don't even have to have a mixer for this. You could use a mixer if you wanted, but you don't need to. I just like to use my big fork. If you use a spoon, you just want to make sure none of it gets stuck in the scoop of the spoon. And if you throw a little flour around, that's okay too. That's what a good washcloth is for, right? You can always clean it up afterwards. So now you can see how dry, especially after putting that flour in there, how thick and dry that batter looks. The first time I made this, and I have to tell you a funny story. My mother-in-law, this was her recipe. And when we lived next door, and she would make this recipe, or any recipe, it could be her cookies, her date nut pinwheels, the oatmeal cake, her custard, any of her recipes, she would never really want me to watch her make them. And I always thought that was kind of funny, but she always acted like they were really hard to make. And so I was just like, wow, I don't know if I could ever do that. So the first time I made this cake, it was after she had passed, and she was not here for me to say, hey, does that look right? Is that what that's supposed to look like? So I just went with it. I thought, well, I guess so. That's what it's supposed to look like. But I really thought I had messed something up because no cake batter looks like that, right? But anyway, so I was like, well, all right, I'm just going to go with it because that's what the recipe says to do. So, all right, so here we go. You're going to see how this is going to turn out. So we beat it well. We've put in the flour. Now we're going to go ahead and put in the 1 teaspoon of soda. There's no baking powder in this cake. It's just the soda. And then it calls for 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. I go kind of heavy on the cinnamon, so it's probably a heaping teaspoon of cinnamon for me. And then just a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. I put all of that in there. We're going to give that another stir. Mix that in. And if you look here, you can see my oats have started to kind of swell and soak up that boiling water. That's what you're wanting. And they look kind of dry too, but they're still very hot. So you'll see when I put them into this mixture what this is going to do. Let me grab my spatula. So you've got all that mixed together. Now we're going to put our hot oatmeal in there. And again, man, I love the smell of oatmeal. It's not my favorite thing to eat, but I love the smell of it. All right, so now that heat, you can see how hot that is in there. That is going to liquefy all of that batter. And as soon as that heat gets in there, look at that. It's like magic. It's like magic, I tell you. Look how beautiful that is. Is that not absolutely gorgeous? And I sure wish you guys could smell it. I know people say that on videos all the time, but it's true. Smell-o-vision. If we could just get AI to figure that out, right? They could just figure out smell-o-vision so you guys could smell it. All right, so now we are going to put it in our baking pan. So I'm going to take my spatula here. Don't want to leave any of that goodness. That's some good stuff in there. So I'll tell you, this pan that I'm using, this is an old pan. This was my mother-in-law's. And I'm not even sure what brand it is, you guys. But it has a lid. It has a lid that comes with it. And you put it on there. And I honestly think if I made this cake in any other pan, my family would probably boycott the cake. Like, this is the only pan Mamaw ever used to make this oatmeal cake in. So this is the pan that I always use to make it in. Okay, so I have sprayed it with some of the Pam spray that has flour in it already. So it is floured and sprayed. And now we're just gonna get this out of here. It's a kind of a thin batter once you put all that oatmeal in there and it warms up. Now, just so you're aware, since we did not use any baking powder, we only used the soda. So it does not have a lot of a leavening agent in there. So it's not going to be a super tall, fluffy cake. It's more of a moist cake. So just so you're aware of that, and you'll see when I take it out of the oven what I'm talking about. All right, we're going to put this in our oven, 350 degrees, preheated. There we go. And when it's ready to come out, I'll be back. So while the cake is baking, I'm going to go ahead and get started on the icing. So we're going to take 1 cup, I'm sorry, not 1 cup, it's 1 stick. 1 stick, which is actually a half a cup, I believe. 1 stick, yeah, half a cup. So half a cup of butter. The recipe actually says oleo, I think, or margarine. Sorry, margarine is what the recipe says. So Mama always used margarine, but I don't use margarine, I use butter. So we're going to take just 1 stick of butter. I'm going to turn this eye on about 4.5, so medium high. We're going to let that start to melt a little bit in there. And we're going to add our 1 cup of brown sugar. Add that right in. You already know where this is going. Anybody who does anything in the kitchen knows that brown sugar and butter together is a beautiful marriage. You can't get much better than brown sugar and butter. It's going to make the most delicious caramel type icing for the top. All right, so to that, I'm going to go ahead, that butter is still melting. I'm going to add 1 cup of heavy whipping cream. It's just 1 cup of heavy whipping cream. Now, I will tell you that for those of you who have alpha-gal, like I do, I have used the coconut cream in place of the heavy whipping cream. So you can buy a can of coconut cream and just use that top part of that can that's real nice and thick. I have used that in place of this, and it is delicious because it adds a little bit of a coconut flavor to the icing. So if you have that alpha-gal allergy like I do, you can absolutely still make this recipe. You would have to use a butter substitute though. Something, and I don't know what that would be because I've not substituted butter with anything, but if you know what you can substitute the butter with, you could make this recipe. All right, so we are going to cook this, let it get nice and hot, let that butter melt, and we're just going to cook it, stirring occasionally until it comes to a nice rolling boil. You want it to really get nice and thick and hot, and then when that gets to that point, then I will show you the next step. Just want to show you guys real quick, I've got this all stirred in. The butter is all nice and melted. It's starting to get a little warm, but I just wanted you to see the color and the texture of it. You can see that's just a really nice caramel color, and it's just a smooth mixture, smooth liquid. So we're going to let that keep cooking, stirring it occasionally until it comes to a full boil, and then we'll probably let it boil for just about a minute at that full boil until it gets nice and thick, and then I'll show you the next step. Okay, so I'm going to let you see this now. It has come to a full rolling boil. You can see that. It's been boiling for about 2.5, 3 minutes, and that's just about the consistency you want, just like that. And I sure wish you could smell it. It smells so good, you guys. All right, so we're going to put in our teaspoon of vanilla. Measure with your heart, you know. Now, if you come in close, you're going to see when I pour this in, I don't want you to get scared because it's going to start to, see how it started to bubble up like that? The vanilla will cause it to do that. But don't panic. Sometimes it might splatter a little bit even, but don't panic, it'll be okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn this way down to about 1. And then I'm going to add, I've already measured it out, my 1 cup of walnuts and 1 cup of coconut. So we're just gonna add that right to it. There's the coconut. Give that a nice stir. And this, I always say the coconut and the walnuts are to taste. I know it calls for 1 cup, but if you feel like you want it to have a little bit more, you can always add a little bit more. If you think it's a little too thin or, you know, needs a little more flavor, you can always add a little more coconut. And as a matter of fact, I probably will, because that looks pretty thin. I'm gonna go ahead and pull it off the burner. And I'm probably gonna grab my coconut. I think it's got plenty of nuts, but I'm gonna grab my coconut. So that was 1 cup. I'm gonna probably put another cup. So my suggestion would be 2 cups of coconut. I don't think you can have too much coconut, to be honest with you. And that's gonna help kind of soak up some of that liquid too. You just don't want it super runny when you pour it on that cake. Oh yeah, that's much better. Much better. All right, so there's your icing. So your icing is pretty much done. We've got about 15 minutes left on the cake. So when the cake comes out, I will show you what comes next. All right, guys, timer's going off. Cake should be done. We're gonna pull it out and test it and just make sure. It was in there for 35 minutes. And that looks like it's gonna be done. It's pulling away from the sides. Can you see how it's pulling away from the sides a little bit there? Woo-wee. Wish you could smell it. You're gonna get tired of hearing me say that. So I'm gonna go just kind of at an angle down in there and come back out, and that is clean. So we are good to go. I'm gonna turn my oven off. Now you could let this cool completely before you put the icing on. Either way is totally fine. You can do it either way, but I prefer to go ahead and put it on when the cake is still pretty warm, and that just kind of helps that icing to soften up and soak into the cake, and it's gonna make it just really nice and moist. This is one of those cakes that's better the second day and the third day and every day. It's better every day. And it's also, I'll tell you, it's also a really good cake to freeze. You can freeze a slice of it or two if you don't think you're gonna be able to eat it all, which is what we usually do when I make this for just Dale and I. We usually freeze some of it, but it's just as good when you take it out and thaw it. So you could even put it in your air fryer to kind of thaw it out and warm it up just a little bit. And what else? Oh, I know the other thing I was gonna tell you, it's best served with a nice cup of coffee and a little vanilla ice cream on the side. That's how we like to have it. So, all right, so I'm gonna take this topping, this icing, and you're just gonna put that on. Sometimes I will make a double batch of this icing and then just only put half of it on the cake and reserve the other half, so that if we do decide to freeze any or something, we have a little extra that we can use to put on there. So then you're just gonna spread that all the way around on the top. It's looking pretty good, guys. What do you think, Dale? Think it looks good? Got a thumbs up. Got a thumbs up from my cameraman. And he should know his mama made this for a lot of years before I came into the picture. So I'm just trying to live up to her oatmeal cakes. All right, so the last step now, I'm gonna turn my oven on broil, low broil, turn that on. So this last step, you have to really be careful. You gotta really be careful, and you gotta stay with the cake. Do not leave the cake. Trust me, I know. This is not my first rodeo. So you're gonna take a little bit of that sweetened coconut and sprinkle that on top. And you know, earlier in the video I said using that coconut cream adds a nice coconut flavor. Obviously there's coconut flavor because you have this coconut. What I should have said was that it enhances the coconut flavor. Just kind of jumps it up a little or pumps it up a little so that it has a little bit more coconut flavor. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the rest of this on. If you don't like coconut, you could leave the coconut out. That's not a mandatory thing, but don't know if it would taste as good without the coconut. But you could certainly do that. If you're not a coconut fan, leave the coconut out and try it, and then let me know in the comments how it turned out. I'd love to know. All right, now, here's the part where you cannot leave the cake. You cannot leave the cake. I'm gonna throw this away. So we're gonna put this in the oven on broil, a low broil. My oven has high and low. I don't know what your oven is, but my oven has high and low broil. So I'm gonna put it on about the middle rack. Set that in there on broil. And now we just stand here and wait, and we're very patient. And let me just tell you, as soon as you think you have 2 seconds to go answer the phone or put something away, 2 seconds is gone and you've burned your coconut. Ask me how I know. And I'll tell you something funny. One time I made this cake. One time, and that's exactly what happened. My phone rang and I thought, well, I'll just answer it real quick. I ran over, answered my phone. On my way walking back from the table to my phone, or to the stove, smoke is coming out. And it was burned. And so I thought, I'm not throwing that cake away. The cake is still good. It's just the coconut on top that was burned. So I took a fork and just very carefully tried to pick off as much of that burned coconut as I could. You could still see little bits of it, but I didn't tell anybody about it. And that afternoon, my son was here eating it, and he said, Mom, I think this is the best best oatmeal cake you've ever made. He said, I think this is the best oatmeal cake you've ever made. And I said, well, that's a good thing because I burned the coconut. So, and we're still good. Okay, we're still good, but you gotta watch it. You gotta watch it because you can smell it when it starts to get a little toasted. And you do not want to let it get too toasted. You want to make sure it's just nice and lightly browned. Yep, we're almost there. I'd say probably another 15 seconds and we will pull it out. Yeah. How do you like my heart shirt? I got this on Amazon. I thought that was really cute for Valentine's Day, and I loved the colors and the little cheetah print on there. So yeah, I got that for Valentine's Day, and this was my Valentine's Day gift. Almost. See, I start talking and then I lose track of time. This was my Valentine gift from Dale today, my little mitts, and I got a new set of tongs. Nice tongs that I can use here in the kitchen. Both of those are KitchenAid brand. I love KitchenAid. There we go, we are done. All right, see that? There it is. Isn't that gorgeous? All right, the only thing left to do now is just try it. So I don't normally cut it when it's this hot, when it's fresh out of the oven like that, but you know what? You only live once, right? So we're gonna take a little piece out and give it a try. And we'll see if Dale can resist this piece of dessert. I'm not sure he'll be able to. That first piece is always a little harder to get out. I'll use my fork here. It's very warm too, so bear with me. Oh my gosh, that is perfect. All right, there it is. Now I showed you, or I mentioned to you that it's not a super tall cake. I'm gonna get under the light a little bit here, but you can see how nice and pretty that crumb is. It's just a very, very moist cake. So I'm gonna take a little bite here. Wish me luck, it's hot. Have you seen that movie Ratatouille? That's what this is. It's a Ratatouille moment. Takes me back to when I first married my husband and we came over for Thanksgiving and Mamaw made this cake. Oh yeah, guys, it is absolutely delicious. You gotta try it. All right. I'm so glad you were here with me today in my kitchen. I hope you learned something new. I hope I've inspired you to get in the kitchen, have a little fun, make yourself an oatmeal cake, or anything for that matter. Just get in the kitchen, go through your cabinets, find some ingredients, throw them together, have fun. You know, like I did with the dressing the other day, the Southwest dressing. Sometimes you just gotta think about flavors that you like and just throw them together, see what happens. That's really fun. So with today being Valentine's Day, I just want to encourage you to love on people. Remember 1 John chapter 4, verse 17 says, God is love. And with today being Valentine's Day, what a better day than to celebrate God's love. And just get out there, love on people, be an encouragement, lift others up. Remember that Christ is the unseen guest at every dinner table and the silent listener at every conversation. So just live your life on purpose, love on people, share joy, and just shine a light. I hope you guys have a great day, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye.
It's a Foley pan.
Are you videoing right now?
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Because I want to. Because you're cute.
Oh, Jeffrey Dale.